enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, September 4th, 2018, getting into the month here. We have got a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on. I mean, you wouldn't know it to look at the corporate media. It's all Kavanaugh all the time. But there's a lot going on. We're going to be getting into all of that. So the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. And today, our third hour guest is Dr. Kevin Barrett. And we're coming up, of course, on yet another anniversary of 9/11. People are going to be starting to look back at that. And again, how the official story doesn't really seem to make a whole heck of a lot of sense anymore. So we'll be talking about that in hour number 3. Starting right off, if you are living on the Gulf Coast, you had better be keeping an eye on the weather, because Tropical Storm Gordon is probably going to hit the Gulf Coast as a hurricane sometime tonight, and it's going to continue northwest, more or less on a direct line, up to Oklahoma. So you need to keep your eye on the maps, and I'm sure you've all been through this before if you live in the Gulf Coast. Get your emergency supplies out, make sure that you've got everything good to go. And of course, we went through all of that here in Hawaii recently. We were very lucky here in Oahu. Apparently out on Kauai, Hurricane Lame flooded Hanalei again. Remember, they got hit with those horrible floods back in April, washed out the highway, and apparently the flooding from Hurricane Lame has damaged the attempt to rebuild the highway. So kind of nasty. Now we've got another storm out there east of us called Norman, but that one is expected to divert north, and so we're not getting very nervous about that one. But it is a rough time of year for the weather with all these storms and everything going on. And I understand there's another tropical storm already forming out in the Atlantic. So I think the United States is going to start feeling like a punching bag here before too much longer. All right. Again, as I said before, if you're watching the corporate media, it's all Kavanaugh all the time, and it is one of the most rancorous events I have ever seen on the floor of the Congress. And the Democrats immediately started interrupting and saying they need to delay the hearings. They need more time to review documents on the nominees' service. And this is one of the things where the Democrats kind of shot themselves in the foot, because they demanded all these documents, huge numbers of documents, more than twice as many documents as any other Supreme Court nominee in history. And then when the GOP provided the documents, the Democrats are saying, oh, well, we couldn't possibly finish reading these until after the November elections, blah, 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 blah. So it's stall. They're basically looking for some way they can hold this off hold off a confirmation vote until the Democrats are back in control of Congress, which is what the Democrats are thinking is going to happen by hook or by crook, emphasis on the crook. But the meeting was just completely chaos. And Kamala Harris was out there tweeting about the hearings must be postponed. They're not transparent. They're not fair. And she tried to have the hearing adjourned. There were a lot of protesters in the chamber as well. But the Democrats were interrupting more than the protesters. And the Democrats interrupted the proceedings 44 times in the first 40 minutes. Meanwhile, out in the gallery, there were all these left-wing protesters, and they were making a ruckus, and over 20 people were arrested in that first hour, including Women's March leader and Sharia law enthusiast Linda Sarsour. It got so bad, Kavanaugh's children were taken out of the hearing room because it didn't feel like it was a safe atmosphere. And I'm sure the corporate media is going to be telling us tonight how it was the Republicans trying to obstruct and disrupt the hearings here. Now, Kavanaugh overall strikes me as a good choice for a Supreme Court justice. I would like to see the court go conservative because of all of the liberal court decisions over the last several years that have basically taken a meat axe to the Bill of Rights and basically raised up illegal immigrants and various fringe protected groups at the expense of ordinary law-abiding American citizens. But I do have two issues with Brett Kavanaugh. One is that he does not seem to have a problem with this complete surveillance of the American people. It's like Fourth Amendment be gosh darned, yes, we can go spy on the American people. We need to because we're scared of them. And the other issue, of course, is that Brett Kavanaugh was tangled up in the cover-up of the murder of Vince Foster. And that's going to be a sore spot for me because it was the murder of Vince Foster that launched me on my unintended and never desired career as a truth activist. People are still talking about John McCain. They're trying to basically polish his image and, oh, he was he was this, he was that, he was a hero and everything. But more and more people are coming on out and saying, no, that's not the real John McCain. That's the fictional John McCain, the image of John McCain. Over in the Egyptian media, they're describing McCain as the godfather, leader, and the real supreme guide of the Muslim Brotherhood. And we've all seen the pictures of McCain with the leaders of not just the Muslim Brotherhood, but with ISIS. Now, remember when Michelle Bachmann called for an investigation into the Muslim Brotherhood infiltration in the U.S. government, and McCain just excoriated her on the Senate floor, called her a bigot and an Islamophobe, and there was ultimately no investigation. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Turning to Syria, it looks like it is really on, and still not a word about this on the corporate media. Late yesterday, the U.S. moved the goalposts for military intervention in Syria, saying that they would respond to any attack on Idlib, even if there is no chemical attack, which tells us that they realize nobody's going to believe another chemical attack at this late stage of the game. So the propaganda was up there saying that, you know, if Russia and Syria and Iran attack Idlib, we will have to take action here. And apparently Trump was out there tweeting, you know, don't you dare go into Idlib. You know, and they're trying to cover it by saying it would be a humanitarian disaster. Well, I'm sorry. The humanitarian disaster exists because of 7 going on 8 years of war by the United States trying to get Assad out. If they were that worried about the humanitarian disaster, don't invade in the first place. But this morning, they moved the goalposts again. And they're back to saying the U.S. will respond swiftly and appropriately if Assad uses chemical weapons. And I think that is designed to give the U.S. government a graceful way out if they decide they're not going to push this. Because Russia and Syria have just started pounding the terrorist positions in Idlib and Hama. This is the biggest bombing campaign of the entire war. and just massive amounts of munitions. The Army is sending in 20 tanks and BMP vehicles, floating bridges, and tens of personnel carriers to the battlefields in northwestern Syria. So it comes down to this. Will Trump risk a direct conflict with Russia over Syria? Because Russia is right in there at the forefront. They've sent in, I think it's 10 Sukhoi 25 aircraft, and they've flown over 50 sorties so far. Now, Russia is warning their citizens that there is a possibility of a direct confrontation with the United States of America. And Russia's military is apparently preparing for that possibility right now. So, apparently over the weekend, Iranian forces were bombed by the U.S. military south of Manbij. Well, actually, that happened yesterday. A convoy of Iranian forces and allied militia was hit by airstrikes as it drove near Al-Tanf base. Now, what's going on here? It's attrition. The U.S. and Israeli attacks on Syria and Iranian forces are designed to slow their advance toward Idlib and deplete their munitions supplies. Well, I'm sure it will slow them down, but whether it's going to deplete their munitions is another story, because they can supply by air. Now, Sunday, Prime Minister Netanyahu underscored the danger of an Iranian military presence in Syria and basically said it's time to start attacking, which apparently is the reason yesterday that the U.S. started bombing Iranian assets here. Story out of Russia Insider. A costly for both sides U.S.-Russian naval clash, a real possibility if Trump falls for another fake Syria gas attack. And this article is basically saying that the indications are that the United States is going to unilaterally declare a no-fly zone over northwestern Syria to protect their assets on the ground, meaning Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Apparently, they've been taking in a lot of new radar systems and just generally laying the groundwork for that. Down in Israel, their officials are signaling an escalation of attacks in Syria. And most Israeli strikes have been limited in certain ways. And it's thought that Israel and Russia sort of had a handshake agreement on what was and what was not off limits. But apparently Israel is now escalating their strikes against Syria and maybe doing so even if they violate the deals with Russia. So it's definitely escalating right here. Earlier today, Israel bombed a strategic Syrian town of Masyaf in western Hama. And according to sources, an Israeli warplane was spotted flying along the Syrian-Lebanon border before crossing into the Homs governorate. Apparently, 5 missiles struck the Wadi al-Yun area. No other details available at this time. So Russia's out there bombing. And 10 Russian Sukhoi jets launched dozens of airstrikes over the southern and western parts of Idlib governorate. And obviously, it's on. The offensive against Idlib is going to be starting imminently. Could be today, could be tomorrow, but it will be in the next few days. Okay, the daily, okay, let's see. Now, as you know, there are Russian naval drills in the eastern Mediterranean. And complicating the situation right now, the Turkish military has boosted its naval group in the eastern Mediterranean. And what they're trying to do is basically stand off the U.S. forces in the area. At the very least, the U.S. Navy, if they're not going to directly engage with Russia and Turkey, they're going to have to launch any cruise missiles from much further out in the Mediterranean, which means there's going to be more opportunity for them to be shot down. Now, the wild card in all of this is the so-called Arsenal ship, the SSGN, the converted Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine, which has been converted to fire cruise missiles and Standard missiles. And it's out there somewhere. And I think that's why Russia brought in that anti-submarine warfare aircraft the other day. All right, let's take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing here? This is Mike. Mike, you know, I got to congratulate you. You're about the only one, even in the independent media, let alone the corporate media, that's actually been talking about this. That is a disgrace. Even InfoWars, I was listening to Alex Jones before. I was over at the gym. I watched, you know, they had to pick, you know, the Fox News and CNN. Well, I didn't expect to see anything there. But even Alex Jones, nothing. Not a zip, zero, nada about this. I'm wondering if he made a deal with Trump, maybe saying, look, Trump said he'll maybe get, you know, some kind of antitrust action against these tech companies, and that Jones should shut up about criticizing any kind of military action. I don't know. I'm just wondering. I'm very suspicious. This is absolutely disgusting. Israel needs to be put in its place. Personally, if Trump wants to get involved there at all, he shouldn't be there one way or the other. But he should tell Israel that if you continue to bomb Syria, we're going to consider bombing some of your airfields. Get out of there! Come on, I'm sorry, that's my dog there. We should, we should start bombing some. We'll start bombing some of your airfields. And if we got along with Russia the way we should, it'd be a cooperative method. It would be cooperative. So both the U.S. and Russia would warn Israel, back off, stop it. You're just pouring oil on a fire. But that's not happening, and it's anarchy, and the danger of World War III goes up every day. It's just that, you know, I don't know what Trump is thinking. I think, you know, does he think if he gets involved in a war, he's going to win this election? He's toast. He's finished if he gets us into a war. And of course, unless it's Third World War, then there probably won't be any more elections. There won't be any planet left to have an election in. But other than that, he gets us bogged down in Syria or with Iran or something like that. Let's say Putin decides to just back off and just support Iran and Syria with weapons, okay, and let the U.S. destroy itself. That might happen too, but that's going to be it for Trump. Then, as far as 2020 goes, we'll probably, I don't know if we get a Democrat either, because the Democrats are, you know, they're all in bed together with this thing.
Yeah, they really are. You know, the problem is that Donald Trump is surrounded by advisors who are controlling what he is being told in order to control him. And they're probably telling him, yes, if you go on in and confront Russia and Syria, we'll sweep the midterm elections and you'll have your second term locked up. And he's not getting good advice. And I understand that Putin is now facing pressure from people in his government. They don't want an outright war, but they're feeling that Putin needs to basically stand up for Russia much more firmly than he has been.
Yeah, this is it. That's why I say this is a very dangerous situation, because one, you know, it's going to escalate and escalate. Sure, they've got their hardliners there too in Russia. They're not going to, you know, they don't want this. But yet, it's not Russia's fault. This is the U.S.'s fault. This is,
yes.
I shouldn't say U.S. It's not my fault. I don't support this stuff. I know you don't support this stuff. But it's this rotten, sinking, evil government that has taken over this country. And that's what's supporting it. And a corrupt corporate media, and even a lot of the independent media, that doesn't seem to want to cover this thing now, until it's too, God forbid, it's too late. So it's got to stop. We got to stop. You know, we don't pay our allegiance to Israel in this country. We don't. That Benjamin Netanyahu is not our president. He is not even a senator. He's nothing. He's just the leader of another country, and a bad leader at that. Okay, he should have no influence on this country whatsoever. He needs to be put in his place. The man is a monster, and you know, he's going to. He is going. It's like having somebody walking around in a I guess you could say in a gas station where there's a gasoline leak all over the place, and you got a psychopath running around there with a lighter, playing around with a lighter. Okay, that's basically Netanyahu right now.
Yes,
that's what this man is doing, and we're letting him get away with it. Trump is loaded down with neocons. Why he put Bolton in there in the first place beyond me. I guess he was told by Sheldon Adelson He needs to get rid of Bolton. He needs to do it fast. And by the way, folks, I've been tweeting him, especially with his tweet today warning Russia and Syria. I've been tweeting him. I say, do not do it. Get us out of these places. Support our troops. Bring them home. People, you need to do that. I forgot what the number of the White House switchboard is. I'll find it out. Lee Stranahan gives it out sometimes on fault line. We gotta start. We gotta start calling the White House. Do whatever it takes. This must be stopped before we get into something we won't be able to get out of. And the consequences are terrible. I lived through the Cold War, okay? And you lived through the Cold War. There were a lot of close calls then. This is worse. This seems to be worse. First of all, the Cold War, at least you could say to yourself, we were stopping international communism from taking over. At least that's what we were told.
That's what we were told here. The problem is with all these high-speed computer systems now in charge of the weapons, this thing could go out of control before anybody could stop it. That's what happened when the USS Vincennes shot down that Iranian passenger jet. That's what happened when TWA-800 was shot down. These things act on their own, and we could be in a major mess with virtually no warning. Anyway, Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back with more phone calls.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And once again, I would be on my knees, but it would take a forklift to get me back up here. We're standing here with our hands outstretched because we need your financial support to keep going. Republic Broadcasting needs your support. So does WhatReallyHappened.com, for that matter. And look how close we are to a world war. And we're trying to talk some common sense in response to all this hysteria and warmongering that's going on. We're trying to bring back civility where we can talk this out, carefully and say, is this really what we want to be doing as a nation? So the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can call in with a debit or credit card donation or to pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. The network thanks you. What Really Happened thanks you. These are very, very dark times, and we've all got to pull together. If we're going to get the big money influence out of our country, it has to be because the little money unites together in that common cause of restoring the republic. Now then, I just put up an article about the White House phone system, and as it turns out, there are actually 2 different numbers, and the article is now at whatreallyhappened.com, so you don't have to write them down right now. There is a public comment line, which is 202-456-1111, and then there's the official White House switchboard, 202-456-1414, that is manned by operators. And okay, let's try this just a little bit. I'm being chastised by the control room over my mic volume. Okay, so those are the numbers, and that's how you can call and make a comment. Not that I expect it's really going to have an effect. The comment line, as far as I know, is just, a recording machine. So getting on to, we get back on to the phone calls here. Dave in Missouri. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, howdy, Mike, but you scared me to death. This is absolutely terrifying. I cannot believe that we are so foolish. I mean, we just come out of Labor Day. Oh, by the way, Amy and I are going to send you $100. I want to challenge everybody, or whatever you want to call it, to match this. You guys need it. I know this. I can't afford it. I'm sure nobody else can either. But you do such critical, important work. Now, this thing with Russia, it's just gotten. I got to throw props out to Mark. Everything he said was absolutely correct. And everywhere else we go, Mike, we hear, "Oh, woe is me," Alex Jones, whatever. Oh, poor pitiful me. And I'm not slagging him down, because I really appreciate the work he's done, especially at taking on the globalists. I mean, that's very critical, important work. And yes, he's public enemy number 1 now. So I mean, I don't want to act like I'm not behind him and our First Amendment, because I am. But you can only hear "woe is me" so much. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And at a certain point, then we got to get back into the fight, and that's where I want him to get into, which is where you are. You don't. I've never heard you once. I mean, when I ask you about Claire or somebody else, you got a bad hip like I do, whatever. But it's not a continual, repetitive thing. You just keep covering the facts, and frankly, you just terrified me with this thing. I don't understand why we would even be approaching, just like Mark said, Netanyahu, I mean, the biggest terrorist on the planet. And our money is paying for that. You know it. It still just confounds me to this day that we can have sitting senators and congressmen who openly have dual loyalties and always side with the enemy of liberty, which is Israel. I just, I still can't stand, and nobody does anything. There's no, there's never a penalty. I'm going to jump off here, but number one, I just wanted to, I kind of wanted to ask about your Labor Day weekend. How'd that go down?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to put you on hold because we got to take a break for commercials. And then after you come back, I mean, it was nothing spectacular, but it was enjoyable. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Joe in Missouri. And basically, just in brief, Claire and I took some time off last week, starting on Wednesday, which was my 66th birthday. And for the first 2 days, I just slept. And then I used the time off to basically catch up on a lot of little things that needed fixing around the home. But the last day, because Claire's back is getting better, we were able to get up to the North Shore and get out of the house and get out in the sun and walk on the beach and that kind of stuff.
That's beautiful. I'm really glad to hear it. And this is Dave in Missouri. But I wanted to bring up something else. I spent my weekend with my family too at our lake home in Arkansas. It's a beautiful place. We've owned it forever. Now I didn't get there in time to catch the catfish that I usually do. So I went to buy some salmon, and this was the most tasteless garbage I ever ate. Mike, I don't know what's going on with just basic product anymore. I mean, you cannot find anything that is genuine. You know what I'm saying? All this they call it farm fresh. Give me a break. It's fed garbage, and therefore it tastes like garbage. Now, at some point, the next generation is not going to know what a tuna tastes like, or a salmon tastes like, or a catfish tastes like, or beef, or because it's all going to be so bland and artificial, And I think we're coming there at light speed. I just had to say that because it was gross, dude, and I spent money on that. Have you experienced that there on the island?
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually don't eat a lot of salmon anymore for a couple of reasons. One of them having to do with, keeping my gout under control. But I understand that the farm-raised salmon tends to be tasteless compared to the wild game fish. And also, apparently, it's a symptom of the GMO salmon, because salmon is the first animal that's been approved for sale. And there are a lot of people who are questioning whether it's even safe to eat. And
I don't know. I mean, I didn't want to feed it to my grandson. I mean, I was scared of it, so I cooked him a hamburger because I have fresh beef. Because I tasted that, and most of it just went in the trash. And people are paying money. People are making money off this. We don't even know what we're consuming. And then you go into the bigger aspect of it with the globalism nonsense taking over everybody. Oh, by the way, I do want to throw out one prop to Jeff Rentz. He's the only one that I know who's really on the Israel thing like you are.
Okay.
And I like Alex for the Chi-Com thing, which Dylan will fight with me about. But I'm sorry, whenever when you're taking money out of my grandchildren's mouth and looting my hometown, no, you don't get by with that. So I dig both those guys for those two things. It's so hard unless you produce it yourself these days, and even then you got to figure out how to feed naturally, so you can have a natural product. Everything is
it is a problem. It's all being taken over by big biotech. Listen, Dave, I'm going to have to let you go because the phone lines are loading up here. But before you go, there's something that everybody ought to consider here. During wartime, and let's be honest, this is wartime, the real healthy, nutritious food goes to the troops. And the civilians back home are forced to make do. And a good example of that would be World War II, when all the real butter had to be sent to Europe to help keep the troops warm through those really horrible winters. And so somebody came up with this substitute butter which we now know as margarine. And when it was originally marketed, it was this white stuff in a plastic bag, and there was a little gelatin capsule of food color. And you'd break the gelatin capsule, and you would knead it around inside the plastic bag until it turned yellow. And everybody said, okay, that's great. It actually was not very good, but it was basically a wartime food for the civilians. And that may be a big part of what's going on now.
I mean, wasn't it plastic, basically?
It was hydrocarbons. I don't remember the actual original formula. Anyway, Dave, thank you very much for the phone call.
Okay, I love you, Mike. Please support RBN, folks. Peace out.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, all we need is a bunch of vitamin to vitamin. That's all we need to eat, right?
Yeah.
And a conveyor belt full of chocolate. Hey, Mike, I gotta disagree. The jobs were, I keep going over it. The Chi-Coms didn't take our jobs. Our own leaders and our own people gave those jobs away.
Yes.
Not all of our population, but we need to stop blaming them.
Yes.
Those dastardly Russians, those dastardly, Chinese. How dare they take? It's not that, Mike. I don't know if you have Aldi's on your island, but they have salmon from Chile, and
Hello?
This in West. Mike. Hello.
Yeah, you were cut off there briefly.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about salmon, Mike. Like, if you have an Aldi's over there, I mean, how? If you're living in the United States, how easy is it to get fresh salmon? You know what I mean? It's going to be coming from Chile or some other country, But Dave's right. There is tasteless salmon out there, but I had some from Chile from Aldi's, which is a German marketplace, and that was actually pretty good. It was fresh, But I mean, there's bad food out there.
Yes.
You got to do some research on. I mean, you just can't grab something off the shelf.
Here's the reality. I mean, between Fukushima toxifying the Pacific Ocean with radioactivity, the Gulf oil disaster, which that stuff is still down there, the dispersant didn't really make the oil go away. It just made it sink. So you can't see it anymore. And the reality is between that and all of these other GMO mistakes they've been making, there is not enough safe, healthy food to feed the current human population. And that's why governments all around the world, including the U.S., are now basically loosening the restrictions for food producers to say, yeah, you can go ahead and do shortcuts, you can add more fillers, you can do this and you can do that, to just, make the people feel like they're eating something and they're not hungry. But the food may not be nutritious, it may not be healthy for us, it may even be harmful. Canola oil is a good example. Food manufacturers love it. It lasts forever. It reduces loss on the shelf, but it can actually cause arterial plaque and dementia. But they're allowed to sell it, and you find it blended in with salad dressings and all kinds of stuff.
Hey, Mike, what's your idea on coconut oil? They've been ripping on it lately, like it's poisonous. I eat coconut oil, not every day. Obviously, you're not going to eat oil-based stuff every day, but I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Anything in excess is no good for you every day, right? I mean, it's just part of a fact.
Yeah.
But I mean,
generally, when you see somebody going on the attack against a particular product, it's because they're getting ready to launch a different product. And they'll rant and rave about how dangerous this thing is for you, and then a couple of weeks later you get a commercial on TV. Oh, for those of you concerned about coconut oil, we have this new product here that's made from ground up kumquats or something.
It's like apples. Eat one day, and then the next day they say they're no good for. Hey, Mike, you know the National Endowment for Democracies?
Yes.
Well, you heard of them, obviously.
Yes.
Well, did you hear what's going on with China now? There's like this report through Reuters that this is all BS, Mike. They got 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps in China. Like, it's like a whole new Russia did this, Russia did that type of thing because, they are the biggest threat to our economic power is Russia and China. So now the Uyghurs thing is coming out where there's 1 million in concentration camps. Now, how hard is it to keep 1 million people in the concentration camp? I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke, man. Like, it's like with Trump coming out. I mean, Mike, if Assad gasses his people for a 15th time, we're going to do something about. How many more times does it take the people to figure out it's bunk of BS? You know, I mean, this is a bunch of loaded crap.
Well, I think people have figured. I think people have figured that out, and that may be why they tried to go back and just say we'll respond to any attack on Idlib. But then again, earlier today they were back to saying chemical attack, which gives the U.S. government a graceful exit if they please decide they don't want to get into a direct military confrontation with Russia.
Exactly, Mike, because you said it yourself earlier. You said the way the Russians did it, which is smart, which I would have did a different way. I would have had the Chinese do the operation because then they can't blame Assad for gassing his own people. They'd have to blame the Russians or the Chinese for gassing Assad's people, right? If China did the operation on the ground, then Assad wouldn't be involved in that. Russia would do the bombing, right?
Yes.
They should have done it that way. I would have looked at it doing that way strategically. But you know what, Mike? Like, you look at it now, yeah, Russia's got 25 ships there doing the drill. Well, there's a reason they're doing the drill because it's, like you said, it's further out of a distance. You have to do a strike.
Yes.
Now, yeah, there might be a U.S. sub down there, but, Mike, 95% chance that they know where that sub is. The Russians are good at that. They know where that sub is. So this has been going on for now a day and a half. This airstrike, they're softening up. They're going in the next, couple hours, Mike. I mean, they're softening up the front end. So, all right, Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And I don't think they're going to go in the next few hours because part of the psychology of air attacks is that you don't let the opposing force get any sleep. So I figure it's going to be at least tomorrow. They're going to be bombing and striking around the clock to keep them awake. And then they'll be sleep deprived along with everything else that's going on. All right, let's switch to Layla in Ontario. Aloha, Layla. Thank you for waiting so patiently. And what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I hope you can hear me better today. I've switched to my emergency phone where I pay by the minute.
Well, talk fast.
Yeah, it's my old iPhone 4. But anyway, there are a few things I wanted to say, actually. I was listening to all of the incendiary dialogue about let's attack Israel or let's not Israel do whatever it wants to do. There's nothing we can do with regard to Israel. It's 70 years too late to try and stop Israel. They've got a huge arsenal. What we have to do is deal with Israel the best way we can. And that is recognizing what we're capable of and what Israel is capable of. And without a global alliance to confront Israel, then it's best to avoid incendiary language because, first of all, Mike, it puts your show in jeopardy. You don't want to be yanked off the air because you're allowing people to promote such incendiary language against Israel.
Point taken. Point taken.
Secondly, the other thing that really bothers me is everyone is talking Trump this, Trump that. He single-handedly is not the U.S. government or the Pentagon or all the other institutions and hidden shadow forces that are actually involved in all of these militant activities. He's probably a hostage himself. So let's stop attacking Trump. I think he's under enough pressure as it is. Here in Canada, the newspapers are all full of Trudeau the Canadians should cooperate with Congress to try and get Trump thrown out and impeached. And they're using NAFTA as the excuse. So Trump is under enough siege as it is. He does not need individuals calling him up and saying, you're a failure. I think he's got to be feeling pretty bad as it is. The other thing I wanted to say about food, we want to live forever. Nobody should ever die. But that means that agricultural or arable land is going to be used up for building housing, and then we expect food to be as good as it was back in the early 1900s. We're victims of our own success. If we want to live forever, we're going to have to learn to eat plastic food and accept it.
Leila, let me insert another comment here. Part of the problem is that the farmland that we've got has been farmed a lot. And that means that the natural nutrients that were in that soil back in the 1900s, it's all gone. And the plants are struggling to grow, and you know, they pour on fertilizers and all these other chemicals to get the plants grow, but it's not a natural process, and it doesn't replace those original nutrients.
I agree, and let me tell you something that my mother told me, that her grandfather told her, that the farmland that we used to own, my grandfather told her he would leave one field fallow every year,
yes,
so that it could replenish its minerals. And that was when my mother said oranges in Jaffa were as big as grapefruits. Recently, I bought some grapefruits thinking they were oranges, and when I bit into them, I was shocked at how bitter they were because they were so small. I thought they were just tiny oranges. My mother said the orange industry in Palestine pre-Israel was amazing, and my mother's family had a lot of farmland, obviously outside of the Bethlehem area, because they used to live inside the town and just farm outside. But the other irony is that when the British came in for the mandate, they confiscated all of my maternal grandmother's land for barracks and other things, and they never paid her because they knew the Israelis were going to take it anyway.
Yes.
So, yeah, I understand the concept of. They even do that sometimes in good horse farms. I used to have a horse. In good horse farms, they would allow each paddock.
Okay, Leila, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're kind of wandering down memory lane, you know, weaving back and forth here. We're coming up on another commercial break. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. By Mel. Great product. My husband and father-in-law use it regularly. Both my husband and father-in-law have had significant change in their blood pressure and overall health. By Amazon customers. It works for me. Returned to buy the tincture and the capsules as they were on sale during February. Unlike some other products, this one worked for blood pressure and occasional irregular heartbeat. Extendivite produced noticeable results after just 2 bottles, a 4-month supply. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think this supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And before we go back to the phones here, I got to get some news in here because there's a lot of stuff going on. Apparently, this issue about chemical weapon attack versus any attack at all was caused by the State Department and the White House not really communicating with each other very well. And apparently it is the White House that is saying we will attack if there's a chemical weapon being used. Meanwhile, it's the State Department, in conjunction with the Turkish Foreign Ministry, is saying that any military offensive in Idlib is unacceptable and must be responded to. And so once again, we're sending a message to the world. We don't really know who's in charge of what's going on. Now, the State Department is supposed to work for the executive branch. He's supposed to work for the president, not try and undermine him or force his hand. Meanwhile, apparently earlier today, the Syrian Air Defense Forces intercepted at least 5 Israeli missiles over the provinces of Hama and Tartus. And this is Syrian state media reporting this. According to the reports, the Syrian Air Defense Forces also engaged Israeli jets, but no hits were achieved. In other words, they got into the aerial furball. And apparently the Israeli strike did cause an explosion in the area of Masyaf in the Hama countryside. At least 1 person is dead, 12 others injured. Okay, now, do you remember how there was this story that hit the news about how Iran, those evil Iranians, had sent short-range missiles to militia in Iraq that could attack Tel Aviv? And both Iran and Iraq are saying, no, it just didn't happen. Israel is saying that they could attack Iraq over these missiles. So they're out there getting ready to attack Iraq now over missiles that don't really exist, just like we attacked Iraq over nuclear weapons that don't exist. All right, back to the phones here. W in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing? I wanted to just talk about, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. I just want to talk about that National Museum in Brazil.
Yes.
I think that's just a tragedy, not
I agree.
for Brazil, but literally for humanity. 20 million pieces of artifacts from 200 years of painstaking study. I think that's just amazing. I think it's even more amazing that in 2018, with all the technology we have today, that there was no sprinkler system in there, and apparently the fire hydrants didn't have any water, so the firefighters had to go to a lake to get water to put out this. But I think, I think it's even more systematic. It's just the corruption and mismanagement of funds in Brazil. That's unfortunate. I've never been to Brazil. I don't know anybody from Brazil, but I actually felt that pain watching when they mentioned, how many different pieces were missing, indigenous languages, just erase artifacts from other countries.
I agree. It's an absolute tragedy for the archaeology and the history. But there's the other aspect in that the people pushing the New World Order don't want us to have a history to remember. Now, whether there was something nefarious about this particular fire. We don't know. Anyway, listen, thank you for the phone call. We got to take a quick break for station identification. Back with another phone call after these few words.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're going to take one more phone call. Then we're going to close the phone lines because I've got a lot of news to get through. We have a third-hour guest here, and I don't want to talk anymore about salmon or organic farming here. So we're going to go to Frank in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, hello. I tuned in today to heard somebody talking about this earlier. I tuned in today at 12:11 p.m., so about 11 minutes into the Alex Jones show, and I stayed on for about 53 seconds and listened to him, and he basically said that he's reached a new plateau of listenership. He's bigger than he's ever been before. I mean, I'm sticking by my theory from a month or two or several months ago. This is where he wants to be. He is going to be the controlled opposition. That's my theory. I think it's holding up pretty well so far. But he's right where he wants to be. He's reached a new plateau. He's bigger than ever before.
Okay. Well, good for him. What can I tell you? So anything else, Frank?
Also, well, I was wondering if anybody had seen my algorithm. And I don't really want to give my personal information out over the phone right now, but if you do, if anyone sees it, if they could just forward it to the board op.
Okay, what kind of an algorithm is it? And, algorithms need computer equipment to run on. Okay, I think he just hung up. All right, we're going to close the phone lines because I got a lot of stuff I need to get through here. Seymour Hersh gave a speech to the ACLU recently, basically saying that what you thought you knew was going on at Abu Ghraib is just the tip of a very, very ugly iceberg. And the speech was reported in the New York Sun last week, which in turn was posted on Jim Romanensko's media blog. And others are picking it up. But basically in the speech, Seymour Hersh is saying children were being sodomized at Abu Ghraib. And the Pentagon has tapes of it. And apparently this was being done to them in front of women who were in cages, just to increase the emotional shock. these are all war crimes, of course, especially you're doing it to a kid. This is not a combatant. This is, little kids are not somebody who knows where Saddam hid his nuclear weapons. This was just brutality for the sake of brutality. And it seems to be a growing trend because apparently a Palestinian man was just flat out executed by Israeli occupation forces. And they just left the guy lying on the pavement for public display as a warning. So the man was 27 years old, Wael Jabari, and was executed by Israeli machine gun fire. And the act of murder was committed by the illegal Kiryat Alba Jewish-only settlement near Al-Khalil in the West Bank. Meanwhile, a family of 9 are homeless. Israel demolished their home in Hebron at the behest of nearby settlers. And apparently the soldiers then stormed the village of Zuwadin and destroyed several community bathrooms legally built on the side of a main road to the village. Soldiers prevented local activists from leaving their vehicles to film the destruction. As you know, every Friday there is the March of Return, the Great March of Return, and every Friday the IDF uncorks on those peaceful, unarmed protesters. And apparently during the confrontation on last Friday, 180 Palestinians were wounded by live ammunition and tear gas inhalation. And according to the Ministry of Health, the number of participants wounded with live bullets in Gaza's Great March of Return included a paramedic who was shot in the chest. So, now as you know, not too long ago, Donald Trump cut off all U.S. support for the United Nations agency that aids Palestinian refugees. And it's now turning out, according to this story that came out of the Times of Israel, that Netanyahu basically called Trump up and said, do this. Now, Trump's excuse was that this UN agency was being poorly run. Well, that could describe pretty much every aspect, not only of the United Nations, but the U.S. government itself. But that was the excuse given. And it was a major change of policy because up until recently, Israel's policy was to allow aid into Palestine, into Gaza, to prevent a humanitarian crisis that could in turn turn into a security situation. But apparently Netanyahu did this without even consulting his own cabinet and his security heads. Just called up Trump, and Trump said, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, here. More and more articles are coming on out about this attempt to conflate anti-Israelism with anti-Semitism, and what a danger this poses for freedom of speech. Because if they carve out one exception to freedom of speech, you know they'll be back to carve out more. Can't criticize GMOs, can't criticize vaccines, can't question the official story about this or that, which is the whole point of the First Amendment, is to ask questions and get the answers that you need and deserve. Now, Israel has been pushing this idea that criticism of the government of Israel represents hatred of the Jewish people all the way back to the founding of Israel. And it's nonsense. That's like saying that the only reason people complain about the Nazis is they hate Germans. Meanwhile, over at the BBC, on the Radio 4 program, John Humphreys was talking about this International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, which he's pushing as hard as he can. And Humphrey said on the air, on BBC4, almost every country in the world has adopted the IHRA definition and examples of anti-Semitism. And of course, he was immediately flooded on social media saying this was more fake news. Because of the 195 countries in the world, only 31 have adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. This is coming from the Jewish Chronicle. And of those, only 6 are said to have endorsed and adopted it fully with all the examples. So once again, BBC was caught lying. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Interesting little question posed by Middle East Monitor. If criticizing Zionism is anti-Semitic, then why isn't Islamophobic to criticize Islam? And like I said, this is like claiming that the only reason people complain about the Nazis is they hate the German people. We're not talking about somebody's race or ethnicity or religion. We're talking about behavior. We're talking about actions. And the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America recognizes and acknowledges our right to speak out about anything that suits us, including the actions of foreign governments which reflect badly on our government for supporting them. Over in China, the U.S. is rattling their sabers yet again. They've had 4 B-52 bomber flights through the China Seas. Still trying to send that message that no, forget the Cairo Convention. Those islands are going to go to somebody else now. These actions are only going to push China and Russia closer together. And it's questionable whether we could win a war against either one. But both of them together, that's just not going to happen. Even if it goes to nuclear weapons, in which case everybody loses in a war with nuclear weapons. Up in North Korea, there seems to be a stalemate. And the impasse is basically over who should make the next concession in terms of implementing their accord. And I predicted this was going to be an issue because Kim Jong-un's attitude was, well, we're going to take down this missile test stand, and then the U.S. does something. We're going to send back the remains of the soldiers. Then the U.S. will do something. Then we'll take this weapon system out. Then the U.S. will do something. And the U.S. attitude has been, you do everything we want first, and then we'll do something nice for you. And that's not going to fly in the Asian mindset. So that has reached an impasse. Does Trump really think the United States can take on the entire world in war? We have 7 officially recognized military conflicts going on, and according to Bernie Sanders, we're militarily engaged in something like 77 out of 195 countries on Earth. Now, there's an organization called the Stimson Center Task Force, and it's directed by Rachel Stoll. And every 2 years, they issue a pamphlet of recommendations to the U.S. government on the use of weaponized unmanned aerial vehicles or remotely piloted aircraft. And apparently, nobody in the government is actually reading these reports. And as far as the report that has come out this year is basically saying U.S. drone policy under the Trump administration is defined by uncertainty coupled with less oversight and less transparency. In other words, they've got these very dangerous weapons, and they're out there just flinging them all over the place. There's no clear guidelines. There's actually a lawsuit underway from somebody who thinks he may have been falsely targeted, because they're just picking people out based on profiling. This is like a cop pulling you over, just based on a profile, and then he pulls this gun out and he shoots you. I still think back to that one very tragic incident where the drone operators saw this crowd of people crossing a street with one very tall person in the middle. And the assumption is, the profile is, the very tall people are always involved in the jihadis and the military, and so they attacked this group. Turned out to be a group of school children with their teacher that got blown to ribbons. Now then, let's get back to the domestic news. This is something that people need to be looking at. As you know, it has come on out that Hillary Clinton's email server was in fact hacked, not by Russia, but by China, by a Chinese-owned company inside the United States. They got into her server, which according to Guccifer was actually very easy to do, and they added some code that automatically sent China copies of every email coming in or going out. They didn't have to get it all in one lump. They didn't have to do a hack. They didn't have to do a flash drive. It was just coming in real time. Now, the problem is that when this was going on, China started rounding up U.S. agents in China. They were captured, many of them were killed. And the obvious question here is, did Hillary's lack of proper security on her server, her use of an unsecured server, which was not supposed to happen. She was supposed to be using the State Department's server. Is she responsible for the death of these U.S. agents? And so far, U.S. intelligence agencies are refusing to do a damage assessment. Talk about being untouchable here. Apparently, a lot of people in the Department of Justice, lower down, have reached their breaking point. And a lot of them are starting to go public with some of the nefarious actions of Robert Mueller. And apparently they're now saying that he's threatened Flynn with new indictment and prison for helping GOP candidates. That's basically it. Mueller is out there, it's campaign season, midterms are coming on out. Flynn is out there trying to help GOP candidates, and Mueller is interpreting it as obstruction of justice, claiming that Flynn's only reason for promoting GOP candidates is that he's hoping he will get a Trump pardon for it, which would represent obstruction of justice. Actually, no, it doesn't. A pardon comes into play after justice has been served. But apparently a lot of the prosecutors at the Department of Justice are absolutely appalled by this kind of behavior, as well they should be. It's completely unethical. Up in Chicago, Rahm Emanuel says he will not run for re-election next year, and saying that 2 terms in office are enough. He called it the job of a lifetime, but not the job for a lifetime. The speculation is that he is getting ready for a run in 2020. And he wants to sort of clear the decks for that one. Over at CNN, which is still out there whining and crying that, Trump is inciting violence against their reporters, which is nonsense. CNN's ratings just took another double-digit plunge in August. And the only reason they're still on the air is they're automatically bundled into every cable package. If CNN was an option, I wouldn't have it in my cable package. If people could choose whether or not they were going to pay for CNN on their cable bills, CNN would have been long gone. CNN is starting to look like Weekend at Bernie's. Dead and gone, but still being dragged around by the cable companies. All right, so let's talk about some of the economic news. Down in Venezuela, Maduro had hoped that he was going to get Venezuela's economy going again with his new cryptocurrency backed by Venezuela's oil reserve. Unfortunately, it's not really taking off. People are being very slow to catch on. Probably because it is virtual, they can't see it, they can't touch it. But the Bolivar is in a free fall, and a lot of investors and creditors are very concerned that Maduro's not going to hold it together. And of course, as you know, Marco Rubio was out there the other day saying it's time for the U.S. to invade Venezuela and get rid of Maduro. Here's your rifle. Over in South Africa, despite all of their so-called reforms, most of which involve stealing other people's property and giving it away, they're not working. South Africa is sliding into a major, major recession. Actually, there's a lot of economies all over the world that are in trouble. Maybe the entire global system is getting ready to collapse, as so many people have been predicting. I mean, those who have the printing presses and the computers can just create money out of thin air for as long as they want until it's devalued to the point where it just won't work anymore. Over in Ukraine, they're facing a catastrophic labor shortage. Apparently, millions of citizens are leaving the country. Apparently, 1.4 million Ukrainians have already moved to Poland. They know there's a war coming. Why would they want to stay there? Meanwhile, here in the United States, well, according to this article over at Investment Watch blog, the U.S. stock market is at record overvaluation. It's due for a bear market. It probably would have already started if it wasn't being propped up for political purposes. But that's the danger of propping up the stock market, is you overvalue it. And for our current market to be at record overvaluation, that is a danger sign. It means when the correction comes, or the crash, if you will, comes, those who are on the inside, those who get the heads up that it's happening, they'll get their money back out. And for all you ordinary day trader investors out there in your little computers at home, all you're going to have left is a very interesting looking brokerage report with a very impressive number at the bottom. And that's all it's going to be, a very impressive looking number. I personally, if I had that kind of money, which I don't, I would not be in the stock market right now. I absolutely would not. Over at Bittrex, which is one of the largest cryptocurrency exchange platforms, they've delisted Bitcoin Gold over this weekend because BTG maintainers are refusing to pay half the damages Bittrex suffered during a cyber attack earlier this year. So they're talking about $250,000, and BTG is saying, why should we pay for your security failures? We'll be right back.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination of garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite is designed to strengthen the heart and arteries and help the body heal itself. Doctors are not able to explain the improvements they are seeing in their patients' health who are taking Extendivite. People who once needed more pills are now taking less and getting better. Due to the unexplainable improvements in their patients' health, more doctors are calling to order Extendivite for themselves. Help Extendivite make your doctor a believer. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about the economy. And as you know, there is a war on cash. The bankers want all the money or currency in their possession, and they'll let you move it around using your smartphones or whatever. But apparently, the European Union is deciding that they need their own systems. The European Central Bank is saying that the EU should challenge Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon payment systems, following several clashes with these American multinationals over their, quote, unscrupulous practices, end quote. And of course, these payment systems, they do charge to use them. So there may be a seismic shift over there. Ken Livingston was out there pointing out that it's been 10 years since the 2008 crisis, and there have been no substantive changes made. The rich are still getting richer. The poor are getting poorer. Inequality is growing. And back in 2008 was the worst economic crisis since the Depression of the 1930s, triggered by the collapse of Lehman Brothers. And they didn't learn anything on Wall Street because they didn't pay for the mistakes. You did with TARP and QE. And apparently, according to this article I'm looking at here, Wells Fargo is back up, ramping up the subprime mortgage-backed securities. Because, hey, when they first started, they made lots of money. And yeah, it all fell apart later on toward the end. But, you know, we'll be smart. We'll get out in time. We'll stick the poor people with the losses again here. Due to the uncertainty over in the Middle East, oil prices are starting to rise. And people are very concerned that if it hits $4 a gallon in this country, it's going to put enormous stress on the U.S. economy. And it will, because our economy is already under stress. There's no resilience. Everybody's running right on the edge. There's no margin. There's no safety. Down in Australia, their housing bubbles that they had in Sydney and Melbourne appear to be popping. Apparently, prices of single-family houses dropped 7.3% last month. And apparently, you know, there's this weird thing that happens. When housing prices go up, it triggers a building boom. Oh, we can make money building houses. And so they'll build a whole bunch of houses, glut the market, and then the prices come down again. So let's talk about immigration and refugees. Out in California, Gavin Newsom is running for governor. And he's out there making a promise. He is promising, and I'm not kidding you about this, he wants to give free health care for all illegal immigrants. Now, of course, he's pandering for their votes. Wouldn't it be nice if the citizens of California, the legal citizens of California, got free health care? No, we can't do that. We can't do that. The medical industrial complex would collapse. No, we got to make money off of those people. But we're going to give the free stuff, you know, to the illegal immigrants because, you know, they'll vote for the bread and circuses. No mention how he intends to pay for it. But I imagine that the taxes on the legal American citizens are about to go up by a huge margin. President Trump is getting into a little bit of a tussle with no less than the United Nations. And it all began back in, right here in Hawaii, where there was a lawsuit filed against the revised Middle Eastern refugee ban. It's not really going to go anywhere because in 2015, Hawaii resettled just 5 refugees, and none of them were from the 6 countries on the ban list. So it's hard to prove that Hawaii was negatively affected by the order. So the Department of Justice is now filing motions to dismiss all these other lawsuits that were being brought against the Trump White House. And again, under U.S. law, Trump has this authority. But apparently now the United Nations Human Rights Commission is debating whether to go after the U.S. for violating international law. My first question here is, where in international law does it say that nations have to have completely open, unguarded, unsecure borders? I dare anybody to show me where that is. But again, they're just pushing as hard as they can on blurring everybody together, blending all the ethnic groups together, except, of course, for Israel. They got to be kept pure. And it's really not working out very well. And when we come back from this next commercial break, I have a few choice horror stories to share with you about the reality of open borders in Europe and here in the United States. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. plus magful clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to aroutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at aroutfitting.com.
Welcome to What Really Happened Radio. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. And now, set your eyes on the future and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I just got an email from somebody saying that up in Canada, about 2 years ago, they passed a law. Customers of cable companies are able to select their own packages and just the channels they want. So we'll see how CNN is doing up there. I keep seeing these ads for a new system called Sling, which is promising exactly the same thing, that you get to pick the individual channels that you want, and you don't pay for the ones that you're not using, like CNN or MSNBC. Getting on back to the immigration situation, over in the voiceofeurope.com, they're reporting on how the German people are now just sick of the migrant violence, and they are right to be so. And a big part of it, and it's a culture clash, the Germans are expecting that these migrants would be polite, grateful, say thank you, but the Germans are finding that most of the migrants from Muslim-majority countries are demanding, unemployed, unemployable, and very easily offended. And it's exactly the opposite of what Germans expect from people who receive almost everything for free. Because their self-centered, egotistic behavior isn't appreciated in a country of hard workers, which the Germans are. Now, again, in Germany, there's been an assault. The Syrian refugee stabbed a German woman, and his defense was that he was acting in accord with his religion. That when you are insulted, stabbing somebody with a knife is an appropriate response. And if the insult is serious enough, killing is permitted. Over in Berlin, apparently a 10-year-old boy from Berlin, German boy, was raped by 3 asylum seeker classmates while on a school trip to an isolated castle north of the German capital. And apparently this 10-year-old boy had previously been harassed by these asylum seeker classmates. And on this trip, they grabbed him. 2 of them held him down while the third one abused and raped him. And here's the postscript to the story. The prosecutor is refusing to prosecute the rapist, saying he's really too young. We're not going to prosecute this guy. Over in Greece, there's a refugee camp at Paileia, Thessalonica, and apparently the migrants living there didn't like the food. So they set the place on fire. I have an idea. If you don't like the food you are being given for free in Greece, go home. Just go home. Up in Sweden, they've reached their breaking point. As you know, Sweden just went whole hog into this open borders, quickly became the rape capital of the world. And the Swedish people have just really had it. And basically, anti-immigration sentiment has gripped Sweden. And of course, the open borders people are screaming, oh, it's racism, it's racism, it's racism. The Swedish people want to protect their culture and their history. And they're being hit with an onslaught of refugees and immigrants who do not wish to assimilate, who in fact are demanding that Europe become the countries they just left. That kind of behavior is very rude. and it's inappropriate. When you go to another country, you learn to fit in. That is the polite thing to do. Many years ago, when I was working in Europe, I made the effort to try and learn German and Italian, much to the amusement of my hosts, who fortunately spoke excellent English. But they appreciated the effort that I had made. We got along just fine over there. Over in Oslo, Norway, the police are saying they've effectively lost the city. Islam has taken over. And they're talking about this district called Gronland. And it's described as having an apocalyptic level of culturally enriched violence. It's only 2 subway stops from the parliament, 1 stop from the central station, and fairly close to the government offices that were bombed by Breivik. Now, the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic is out there saying, we don't want to live in the Middle East and Africa. And he's out there saying that Europe must fight for its culture and values amidst this crisis. The recent riots in Germany show how the uncontrolled influx of migrants leads to explosive situations. So now he's been declared the main threat to Europe. Ooh, bad, bad. Czech Prime Minister. Soros is still trying to hold the EU together. They're still trying to find a way to derail Brexit, or at least take the teeth out of it. Here's a very bizarre story. Now, Chuck Todd is a guy who works at the Democrat Party press office, NBC branch, and he's got a wife who's a political consultant for Democrats. Now, Chuck's wife went on a rant against Bank of America, saying that she will never do business with Bank of America again. Why was she so angry with Bank of America? Because Bank of America is concerned with illegal aliens getting involved with mail and wire fraud using their bank. Now, you think about that one for a while. She's angry with Bank of America because they're trying to deal with illegal immigrants involved in mail and wire fraud. You know, how dare you go after those fraudsters? You're just being racist here and insensitive. Up in Oregon, another illegal alien driving drunk has killed an Oregon couple, leaving their 3 children orphans. Isn't that wonderful? Over in Great Britain, apparently their deportation process involves a final appeal where refugees and illegal immigrants who've been hit with a deportation order are allowed to appeal that decision to the courts. And apparently the courts are blocking 3/4 of the final deportation attempts. This is being reported by The Guardian. Anyway, getting on back to Brexit, Theresa May's got to be feeling like a ping pong ball right about now. She's just getting bashed back and forth, both sides of her party. And basically, pro-European Union former cabinet minister has warned Theresa May that her blueprint was less popular than the poll tax. This is former Education Secretary Justine Greening, and said, the plan unveiled at Chequers is now dead, and there's no point having a government spending 2 vital months working on that when it should be working on a new plan. Jacob Rees-Mogg is saying that he and the EU's chief negotiator, Michael Barnier, also agreed the Chequers proposal was total rubbish. I think they need to go for a hard Brexit. I think Great Britain needs to realize that the EU probably needs British products and will quickly come to a trade agreement. Maybe something along the way that the EU and Canada have a trade agreement. But the more they talk, the more the Remainers are out there. They're still trying to get a second referendum going, which represents a betrayal of the British people. We're just going to go on having elections until we get the result that we want. Now, speaking of foreign interference, the French President Macron is slamming the Swedish populist leader just days before Sweden's elections. And Macron came on out and said Sweden Democrats leader Jimmy Åkesson is not compatible with Swedish values. Now, that really is foreign interference. When you go on in and say you attack a candidate like that. Apparently the concern is that would Sweden side with the EU or maybe move more toward Russia and start looking for its Swexit? Because a lot of countries are talking about that now. Moscow is now saying that they are noticing U.S. attempts to meddle in the Russian election process. And part of it involves Google. And they're concerned because Google may have violated the law by selling political ads for an unsanctioned rally. And Andrei Nestorenko, who's a senior Russian diplomat, said that the U.S. certainly does attempt to meddle in the Russian electoral processes. And our collective opinion is that electoral sovereignty is a principle that all civilized nations should respect. I certainly agree with that. Israel. And supporting that is that apparently some of the exchanges between Clinton and Yeltsin have been released and prove that Clinton sent some of his people to help Boris Yeltsin get elected. Because when the 1996 campaign started, Yeltsin was just way, way behind in the poll numbers. But he got elected somehow. The Department of Justice, at the direction of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, is creating a system similar to the Amber Alert systems to alert Americans they may be subject to Russian meddling. And basically, they're going to set this up to send out push notifications to mobile phones across the country to basically say, don't listen to that candidate, they're being controlled by Russia. They're being controlled by... It's propaganda right on your cell phones. How about a system to warn us about meddling by Israel? And I hope there's a way to opt out of this thing, because I certainly do not want push notifications coming into my phone screaming about Russian meddling. Over in Boston, there's a little bit of a controversy going on because there was this Christian group who was hosting an event at the City Hall Plaza in Boston, and they wanted to fly a Christian flag on the State House. And Boston said no. But they had no problem in Boston flying the gay pride flag from the State House. Okay. Probably here in the background, they're running the monthly test of our siren systems, our tsunami warning and missile warning systems. Over in California, state legislators, rented lips, have passed a bill forcing all publicly traded companies to make sure they have women on their boards of directors. It's another quota system. And I can understand why a lot of kids don't think it's important to study in school anymore. Because success in our society is less about your education and qualifications and merit, and more about you fitting in with a particular protected minority group. Now, as you know, following the shooting in Parkland, Walmart instituted a nationwide policy of saying they will not sell a gun to anybody under the age of 21. So up in Oregon, a young lady named Hannah Brumbles went to her local Walmart. She's an 18-year-old college student, and she was denied her purchase. Now, she and her father, who's a gun rights activist, filed an age discrimination complaint with the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries in April, claiming the store violated state law. And in a decision this week, the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries agreed with the Brumbles' complaint that Walmart was illegally discriminating against this 18-year-old. And again, I come from a gun culture. I grew up with this stuff. Where I grew up, you got your first gun at age 12, usually a bolt-action .22, and you were taught gun safety. And the first time you mishandled that weapon, you would get a trip to the woodshed, would have you eating dinner standing up for a week. Everybody had guns. They were everywhere. And we didn't have mass shootings. In all the years that I lived in that little town, growing up, there was only one incident involving a gun, and that was an attempted suicide. That was it. Of course, we also didn't have our brains melted on these prescription antidepressants either. Down in Virginia, Governor Terry McAuliffe, and I'm not kidding you, the video for this is actually linked to whatreallyhappened.com. He's out there pushing the gun grabber agenda, and he says, we lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence, with a straight face. 93 million Americans a day to gun violence. Now, Terry, I have told you a million, billion, trillion times, do not exaggerate. Because if we lost 93 million Americans a day to gun violence, this country would be completely empty in a week. So, there's a company in Israel that is manufacturing a bulletproof school bag. Now, it's more than a bag. It actually is a complete bulletproof vest that has a built-in backpack on it, and they're getting all kinds of orders for this thing from concerned parents. I foresee one problem with it, and that is that it's going to be very heavy, and in summer it's going to be very hot, and I think you're going to have a lot of kids who are just not going to want to bother wearing them. But I'm in favor of armed guards at the schools, if that's what it's going to take, or arming and training the teachers, or making sure that people who are mentally ill are not allowed to get guns. And that's where the system broke down with this last shooting incident. The guy had been on medication. He'd been in a mental hospital, and he was still allowed to buy a rifle. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back after these few words.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. This product is superb. I have been taking it for about a year now, and I can feel my cardiovascular system run like a Swiss watch. I definitely recommend this product for anyone that has high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and heart palpitations, A+. It's potent, but it works. I have been waking up for the past 3 years with numb hands, and a week into using Extendivite, my numb hands seem to have cleared up. My circulation was off, and now it's back on track. So I'm happy. I feel so energized, and I have my husband on it now. My mother-in-law has cholesterol problems, so I bought her a bottle as well. Thank you so much. Love the product. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently there was a bit of an outage on Instagram and Facebook earlier today that literally went global. Parts of South America, the Philippines, and India, US and Europe, people were just unable to log on in. This is when you find out who really is addicted to social media, because they start sweating and shaking and fondling their electronic devices here. But they're trying to fix it, get it back up there again here. Now, story coming out of thehustle.co, and it's about DuckDuckGo, which is a rival search engine. And apparently, because of Google's issues with data mining and filtering, people are switching over. And DuckDuckGo is really, really taken off, and they've managed to secure $10 million to grow the company and their tools. And a big part of their tools are designed to protect your privacy from advertisers, from miscreants. Another story, this one out of Sons of Liberty Media. Forget about Russia, okay? It's these social media giants who are filtering conservative voices that are trying to influence the November election. And this is something that we have to put out, because a lot of Americans aren't really aware that this is going on. That when they go to Facebook or Google or Twitter, that what they're seeing is just what these corporate offices want them to see. And that, I think, definitely does represent an attempt to influence the election. And I think at some point there might actually be a legal basis for enforcing neutrality on these platforms. All traffic treated equally. Over in Sweden, there's a non-governmental organization that has launched a campaign called Freedom for Julian Assange, and they've issued a statement outside the Embassy of Great Britain in Stockholm. We demand that Ecuador and Great Britain do not extradite Julian Assange. Meanwhile, people are very concerned over one of Assange's cybersecurity experts, Arjen Kamphuis, who's a Dutch citizen, has been missing for a while, and the police have opened an investigation. And could be a hiking accident, could be a hit. Nobody really knows, but people are getting worried. Oh, and I love this one here. Apple's self-driving car in autonomous mode, robotic mode, got into a car accident. They were rear-ended by a Nissan Leaf being driven by a human driver. All right, there's the music. We're going to take a break for station identification. We're going to be back with Kevin Barrett after these few words.
Many people write about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. My wife and I both use Extendivite and are very pleased with the results. It has helped to stabilize our blood pressure and to make both of us feel healthier. Good product and good buy. So far, so good. I've been taking Extendivite 3 times a day, only a short while now, but already I've noticed the circulation in my hands and feet improving. They tingle. I like the idea of taking something herbal rather than pills. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think this supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And joining us on the line right now is Dr. Kevin Barrett. And Kevin, thank you for spending time with us today.
It's great to be back with you, Mike.
Well, as you know, we are now in September. We're coming up on yet another anniversary of 9/11. And once again, people's attentions are turning to looking back at the available facts, and basically a lot of questioning is still going on as to just exactly what did happen on 9/11. There's a lot of nonsense stuff being thrown on out there. I've got emails already about the Twin Towers were brought down with directed energy weapons and micro nukes, and just trying to, kookify the entire discussion. But we're not going to go there because we understand that's exactly what they're trying to do. So what is the latest that you're hearing about 9/11?
Well, I don't think the real issue is precisely how they conducted these controlled demolitions. Basically, they blew up the whole World Trade Center, not only the 3 skyscrapers, but every other building with a WTC prefix was totaled, some of them by really huge explosive type events. And no building that was not part of the World Trade Center was totaled or even significantly damaged, which is interesting because Building 7 was further away from the towers than some of the non-WTC prefix buildings that were just kind of, they had some steel structural material from the towers impale them, but they weren't badly damaged. So what we saw here was the destruction of the World Trade Center through some kind of explosive process. And I don't think it's helpful to get into too much debate about what it was, because it was one form or another of a controlled demolition. But the purpose of this, Mike, was not just to take away these condemned for asbestos white elephant buildings It wasn't, just even to start a war. It was to create a whole new public myth. Philip Zelikow, the sole author of the 9/11 Commission report, who actually wrote the whole report in chapter outline before the commission even convened, self-describes as a specialist in the creation and maintenance of public myths. So that's what this was really about. It was meant to change history by creating a whole new myth that would drive a whole new policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know a lot of that policy came out of the Project for the New American Century. We know that the war plan for the invasion of Afghanistan was already on Bush's desk when 9/11 actually happened. And we know that throughout history, the U.S. government has not hesitated to use hoaxes and fakes and frauds to get wars going. Sometimes they'll take advantage of an accident like they did with USS Maine, which blew up from a coal bin fire. And the Hearst newspapers said, oh, Spanish mine launched the Spanish-American War. We all know now that the Lusitania had, in fact, been smuggling weapons to Great Britain when it was torpedoed by the Germans, getting us into World War I. We know there were no torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin. We know that Saddam did not, in fact, have nuclear weapons, and on and on and on. And I think if there's a lesson that needs to be taken away from all of this right now is for the American people to understand that the U.S. government and the corporate media lie to them. Not once, not twice, not every once in a while, but on an ongoing, permanent basis. We are the most lied to people on the face of the earth.
Absolutely right. And you're doing yeoman's work opposing those lies. And I appreciate your fantastic record as an alternative broadcaster, Mike. And, when I was talking about this as a mythic event, it goes beyond just garden variety political lies. You're right, they lie to us all the time. But some of those lies turn into sacred stories or myths that found a whole new way of looking at things. And that's what 9/11 did. World War II likewise created a myth that changed America's orientation toward the world. Before World War II, we had an army that was about the size of the army of a very small European state. It was nothing compared to armies of the major European land states like Germany and Russia. And, our founding fathers said we weren't even supposed to have a standing army. So the attitude of the United States was still that George Washington was right when he said we shouldn't intervene in foreign quarrels. Mm-hmm. We should defend our borders and mind our own business. World War II changed that because of the myth that emerged after World War II. It was a two-part myth. One was the Pearl Harbor myth that we are vulnerable to a horrific surprise attack. And then the other part was the myth that we were fighting ultimate evil, that Hitler was the devil who conducted this massive human sacrifice in the gas chambers and the ovens. And so that myth has completely overturned the American way of doing business in the world. Since World War II, we have been out there treating every conflict as if to be reasonable and negotiate would be appeasement, like Chamberlain did during World War II.
Yes.
That we could be hit by a Pearl Harbor any moment, like this new Pearl Harbor on 9/11. And every enemy du jour, whether it's Saddam or Gaddafi or Putin or Assad or whoever, is a new Hitler. So we're still being driven by this myth of World War II. And the neocons who gave us 9/11, we're trying to create a whole new myth, a myth to revive the Pearl Harbor myth and the devil Hitler myth of World War II, and to turn it against the enemies of Israel primarily. That, I think, was the main geostrategic purpose.
Yes, I would agree with that. And we even heard that from some of the people. I think it was Ariel Sharon, when he was first asked about 9/11, the first thing he blurted out is, it's very good. Well, then he said, no, it's not really good, but now the American people understand how we feel.
That was actually Netanyahu said that.
You're right, it was Netanyahu. But it was a psychic shock. And, even being suspicious right from the very first moment I saw it on TV, it was still a very powerful thing to grapple with this huge building crashing down. But you're right. It's a new myth. It's a new victimhood. It's a new vulnerability. And in addition to launching the specific war against Afghanistan, every time that they want to get another war going, they bring back 9/11 and the two towers, and it's almost like they're saying that we have a right to exact vengeance on the entire world for what happened in New York City.
That's right. And the way they got that feeling going is through a human sacrifice operation. this gets into the nature of myth and religion, which is Philip Zelikow specialty. And
Yes.
Zelikow knows that people like Rene Girard, the great scholar who passed away a couple of years ago, have discovered the ubiquity of ritual human sacrifice cross-culturally. It's all over. It was in the old Mediterranean. It was, on both sides of the Mediterranean, children were sacrificed to Moloch and so on and so forth. And you find the same thing in Africa, in Asia, in all sorts of cultures. And you find it disguised in all sorts of oral traditions and even literatures. Our great literature has mostly got these kinds of half-conscious echoes of human sacrifice. So it's a huge motif in human culture. As Rene Girard said, all culture is founded on a murder and a lie. And Zelikow knew this, and the other scriptwriters of 9/11 knew this as well. So they knew that by orchestrating this shocking event as a kind of a sacrifice, an immolation or holocaust, and that means burnt offering to the gods,
Yes.
a human sacrifice, they could get people to really go deep into their unconscious and brainwash them. And that's why we have this annual ritual where every September 11th, the whole country is galvanized by this sort of annual event. This is a clue that this is a mythic religious event. If it weren't, we wouldn't even pay attention to the anniversary. And so they've got a whole new sort of religion going here, this 9/11 official conspiracy theory religion. And that's one of the reasons it's so hard to try to break through at talking about these obvious indications that this was a false flag. The whole official story falls apart under close scrutiny, and yet people don't want to look at it. And the reason for that is the same reason that people didn't want to look at the heresies in 500 years ago, that the Earth actually revolves around the sun rather than the other way around, and these other heresies that got people burned at the stake. There's a kind of a fanaticism and a tribal mentality and a kind of collectivist emotional orientation that gets going when there's a kind of a sacrificial event like this that creates a sacred narrative. And so we're trying to bust the sacred narrative. We're committing heresy when we talk about the truth of 9/11, and we have to recognize that. And if we understand how this stuff works the same way that Zelikow does, we can be more effective.
Absolutely. It's an interesting way of looking at it, and it hadn't occurred to me, but you're absolutely right. When there's a lot of death involved, all of a sudden it's like hands off. It's become an icon or a cenotaph, and we shouldn't question. But you're right about the heresy. I mean, those of us who've been working to get the truth out about not just 9/11, but TWA 800 or Vince Foster and everything, we're treated like we're social outcasts, like we're undesirable. And there are a lot of people who don't want to know the truth behind these myths out of the fear that they're not going to like what they find. And they're going to be put in a position of having to decide, are they going to do something about it or not? Anyway, we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines for anybody who's got a question for Dr. Kevin Barrett. And the subject under discussion is, of course, 9/11 myth-making propaganda. Also, I'd like to take this second to do a quick shout out to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So we're coming up again on another anniversary. And boy, it does seem like it was just so many years ago that this happened, and yet it's one of those classic imprinting memories. I remember it like it was yesterday. Walking, I got a phone call from a friend. I turned on the TV just in time to see the second plane hit. And it's like, where were you when you learned Kennedy had been shot? These things do tend to stay with you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't know to what extent you get into sort of the esoteric dimension of the symbolism involved, but I think you don't have to be a kind of a crank, nutcase like some people who go too far into the numerology and all of this to notice that they targeted the two biggest symbols of Freemasonry. The twin towers of Joachim and Boaz and the pentagram. Those are the biggest symbols of Freemasonry, and those were the targets. And when they stage this immolation of thousands of people in these twin towers, it's a message. So I think 9/11 in a sense was a coup d'état within a certain kind of Freemasonry, as well as a coup d'état in the United States. And this gets into the fact that organized crime uses secret societies to stay secret. They have to keep secrets if they're doing organized crime. If they're trying to infiltrate the most powerful institutions, that's it's very handy for them. And so this kind of symbolism operates at different levels. At one level, it's a signature saying, our gang did this. And I think that's the reason that there is this aspect of the symbolism of, Twin Towers and pentagram or pentagon, of 11s. They love 11s. Kennedy was killed on 11/22. And, I went through all the big false flags post 9/11. There are an awful lot of 11s in the dates. These kinds of things, which some people obsess over in an unhealthy way, are, I think, signatures done by the folks who did this just to say, hey, our gang pulled off this crime.
Well, I often wondered if maybe the choice of the date 9/11 was because of its close association with the emergency phone number that people would have, and basically get that link. Okay, we've got some callers on the line, and we're going to go to Dave in Missouri. Aloha, Dave. Do you have a question for Dr. Kevin Barrett?
Yes, I do. Doc Kevin, wow, how articulate, how learned. I mean, thank you so much. I'm sorry to call twice in one day, Mike. I don't usually do that. So I could remember when the whole thing went down, and you're sitting there in utter disbelief as, okay, a couple of planes hit a building, and then suddenly it just implodes, and everything on television is how a natural collapse, the weakening of the steel, all the bogus garbage. Then you get into all of, I'm going to call it witchcraft or Satanism, whatever it is. I mean, these people are certainly not healthy individuals, and they unfortunately our government. I can remember playing this on my laptop to my family, who could not digest that these buildings didn't just fall down, man. I mean, but the whole world bought that scam, and Doc Kevin, the only reason I called you was just to say kudos, congrats, thank you for your strength, your wisdom, for articulating the truth, for not backing down. But I mean, I guess we're just a world of fools led to slaughter. And I'll let you comment on that. But again, thank you, and God bless you and your family.
Well, thank you, Dave. God bless you too. That's a good comment. The one thing I would possibly take issue with a little bit is they didn't convince the whole world. The polls show that actually the world is split on 9/11. Even the United States is split, with a lot of skepticism out there. From day one, the vast majority of Muslims in the world, there are almost 2 billion Muslims, vast majority have always said that this was some kind of false flag, and they still do. And those polls, you can look at those polls reported by mainstream outlets. And in the United States, it's been split, with some polls showing as high as, I think it's 87% or so of Americans do not believe the government's telling us the full truth. And as many as 36% in a Scripps poll say that it was probably an inside job designed to launch the wars in the Middle East, which of course it was. So 36% of the American people, that's over 100 million people. That's a lot of people.
So how does this roll down then, Doc? I mean, how can they pull this off in everybody's face? And because I mean, we're talking generations now who are affected by this. How can this possibly go down with nobody ever paying a price? It reminds me, of the housing scam or the bank bailouts. I mean, they just continue to rub our face in this. How can they pull it off? Is there anything that people can do to ever achieve justice for our children? I mean, or do we live in some kind of cartoon? I don't even understand where we are these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I ask myself the same things all the time. I've been aware that we're living in a country that's not what it purports to be ever since I was 15 or 16 and discovered the JFK assassination problem. So I grew up recognizing that things aren't entirely what they seem, and we've got some serious high-level corruption in this country. And that's it's something we just have to face and work on it, and it's a long-term thing. I think that with the internet and the alternative media, we're reaching a point that people don't really believe the official worldview the way they used to. And I think that's worrying the people who are behind these crimes or who are covering up for these crimes. And that's why we're seeing more and more internet censorship these days. So I think things are sort of moving in the right direction.
Right, that was the point I wanted to make. I mean, they're shutting everybody down, right? I mean, you can't speak the truth. You're not allowed to digest it. If you do know it, you're some sort of conspiracy theorist. I mean, all of us who have any understanding or just want to know the truth and just want to pass on, liberty, to the next generation, we're all nutcases because we didn't buy the JFK story. We didn't buy 9/11. I mean, they didn't fool us, and so therefore we have the problem, and they never pay the price, man. And that's and that I think is the thing that bothers me most. Is because I do want to see justice. I believe that people should be held accountable for their crimes. I mean, if I get a speeding ticket, I got to pay, right? So how come the bankers get bailed out? How come what's Silverstein, what's his name? Why is this allowed to happen in our face? And how are we supposed to tell our children there is any justice in this world? I'm going to hang up because it really bothers me. And I Doc, thank you so much for your work. Please continue.
All right. Well, thank you very much
Dave.
for the phone call. Thank you for the phone call, Dave here. And I'm less interested in punishing these people who pulled off these hoaxes. I'm more interested that the general public know about them, that the general public understand that we are lied to on such a massive scale, that we have a government that is willing to send thousands of people to horrific death to try and make a point to steer us into war. And Americans need to basically wake up to that ugly reality so that we can make better choices in the future. Dave is right. The corruption is out of control. The elections are rigged. Anyway, we got to take a break for commercials. We're going to be gone for about 3 minutes. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words.
Do you or someone you know suffer from chest pain, blood pressure, cholesterol, or irregular heartbeat? Are you looking for a more natural solution to overcome these health challenges? You hear the ads all the time. If this stuff's so good, why doesn't my doctor prescribe it? That's easy. Doctors are not trained in natural medicine. Extendivite Heart Tonic does want you to be as healthy as you can be, and it really works. Take Extendivite for 6 months and your doctor will say, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop. It's working for you. Get the dependability of Extendivite. Just see how you feel in 6 months. A 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid is only $69.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, How would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, I mean the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay.
And aloha America, welcome back to our show. We're talking with Dr. Kevin Barrett. We're talking about 9/11 coming up on another anniversary, and we're going to go back to the phones now. Robert in London, aloha. Thank you for waiting so patiently. Do you have a question for Dr. Barrett?
Hi, good evening. Yes, not actually a question. It's a few points that shocked me about 9/11. If I may just pass on those few points. One was, I was working on the day of 9/11, and I just happened to speak to somebody, and I gave a little Bible quote which said, "The day the towers fell." So obviously, nearly 20 years later, I'm still saying the day the towers fell, which is Isaiah 55 approximately. Something that really got me out of my chair watching the news on TV was Giuliani, the New York mayor, who was very sort of strong-faced about 9/11, etc. But he went to Israel. He paid a visit to Israel afterwards. He, in fact, visited Israel about twice, if I remember correctly. And George Bush paid a visit to Israel twice. And President Sharon, he paid a visit to America once. On all of those visits, on the TV, everybody was really happy. Never at any time was any Israeli minister on any news report, they are never smiling. They are very grim-faced at all times. But on these particular visits, they were really happy to meet each other. They were good friends, and they were buddies, and wow, what a happy time we're having. And I was really shocked by that happy face, if I may just say. And Netanyahu now, these days, he's getting what he wants. He is never happy, but he has that wry smile. But he's not really happy. But when Giuliani visited Sharon and President Bush visited Sharon, they were really happy. And I was really, it's all about 9/11. They were so happy to meet each other. I don't know if you have a comment about that, but I was really upset. Thank you.
Kevin?
Hello?
Examples of Israelis being overjoyed by 9/11, starting with Netanyahu. His first reaction on 9/11 when they asked him was, it's very good. And then he corrected himself and said, well, it's not good, but it's good for Israel. And he said the same thing again 7 or 8 years later, that he said, we are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Pentagon and the Twin Towers. And he's not the only one. There are a long list. The dancing Israelis. And Mike Rivero, you have done great work on exposing the dancing Israelis who were set up to film in New York, apparently before the towers were even hit, and filmed that strike on the towers and wildly celebrated. And they were arrested with thousands of dollars of cash stuffed in their socks, working for Urban Moving Systems. And they were brought in and held for a month and a half. They failed lie detector tests. Urban Moving Systems was revealed as a Mossad outlet, and these dancing Israelis who had been wildly celebrating, cheering, and flicking cigarette lighters, taking pictures of each other in front of the burning and then exploding towers, were then sent back to Israel by Mukasey, I believe, and they did an interview there and said, well, we were only in New York to document the event, which gives us the question of, well, how do they know there was an event coming up to document? So we have the dancing Israelis, we have Netanyahu celebrating 9/11, we have allegations that Mike Harari, the legendary former Mossad chief, called a huge party in Bangkok, Thailand, right after 9/11 to celebrate the success of that operation. And there are other examples as well. So clearly, the Israelis knew that this was in their interest at the very least, and some of them probably knew that they were the ones behind it. And that is pretty disgusting. But if you actually look at the mainstream coverage in the U.S. after 9/11, you get a certain kind of sense that even our mainstream media was not honestly mourning the people who were killed, but rather was partaking in a kind of almost celebratory war hysteria, saying that, what's needed is a purple fury that doesn't fade away. That was Time magazine, I believe. Basically dancing on the graves of all these sacrificed people, knowing that there was this big series of wars coming up. And I think the fact that Zionists largely control our media, and that at that time Israel was in serious danger. It was going bankrupt. The suicide bombings had turned the immigration situation around, and Jews were fleeing Israel rather than going to Israel, and its economy was imploding, and 9/11 saved Israel. And I think even some liberal Zionists, the types who run the mainstream media, were not entirely unhappy about that. And then, of course, there's the thrill of a huge event to cover if you're in the media. Yes. So there were all sorts of people who were kind of enjoying themselves, and when we look back at it now, it's pretty shameful.
All right, well, Dr. Barrett, we're going to have to take another break for commercials here, so this one is going to last 4 minutes long, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you one from Amazon.com. I just wanted you to know I saw my doctor and I laughed because he said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. I have been taking Extendivite. I had borderline high blood pressure, heart flutter, high cholesterol. I changed my diet and included Extendivite with an amazing turnaround for the better. A few months later, I had a doctor's appointment and took a stress test. I passed. No heart flutter, blood pressure was perfect. My doctor even took me off my medicine. I thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. This stuff works, and I'm so grateful for Extendivite. Thank you, Justin G. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. We'll plant them anywhere you like and blow up anyone. Whip this world into a frenzy, killing babies, dads, and moms. If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. If you got the money, well, we won't say we did. The tower.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're still talking with Robert in London. And Robert, you had one more thing for Dr. Barrett.
Yeah, hi. It really is George Bush, President George Bush. After 9/11, and we're in Iraq, or America's in Iraq, and they can't actually prove weapons of mass destruction. So he has a team of 80 men who go around the desert, digging up, looking for these weapons of mass destruction. And they spent 6 months, and apparently they spent $600 million digging up the desert, looking for weapons of mass destruction, not finding anything. So George Bush goes back to the Congress and asks for a second $600 million for this 80-man team to go out, dig up some more desert to see what they could find. And obviously they never did find anything at all. But how much money for how few people doing, I don't know how difficult a job, but what a lot of money. You know, what a crazy world we live in. That's my comment. Thank you.
Well, the mainstream media admits that there were no weapons of mass destruction, at least no usable ones in Iraq. And of course, even if there were, they never would have been used against the United States. The real threat has always been that the Zionists in occupied Palestine have been treating people there so badly and treating their other neighbors so badly that they're hated, and they're not sustainable unless the U.S. gives them more and more support. So that's why we had to have this $6 trillion campaign against Israel's enemies. And that's really what it's all about. It's what it boils down to. And you know, at some point, Americans are going to have to stand up and take back America and start running this country on behalf of the American people and rebuilding our infrastructure instead of throwing $6 trillion away on these wars for Israel.
All right. Well, Robert, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And, of course, you need to understand in a war zone, everything costs a lot of money. If you remember the scandals over Kellogg, Brown, and Root that had the contract to bring equipment and supplies into Iraq, their markup was just horrendous. And I know because I had a family member who served in Iraq, and they were telling us the water they were getting was terrible, was very expensive to get the water to the front line there, and it was just a big money-making operation. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Andrea in Oklahoma, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, for both of you. The question is, since 9/11, and we know pretty much it was, we think it is, and it wasn't anything with Saudi Arabia or what they, look at this over here, but don't look at us. The fallout to that is like stepping on an anthill. We jumped into war mode and went into Afghanistan, and we went into Iran, and we've gone into Libya, and we've gone into Syria, and we have Israelis sitting in our Senate, which they don't care about America. They're not going to put us first, second, and third. The fallout seems like we're attacking all the nations around Israel, and Israel is kind of, prospering very nicely. And if you would please look at what the fallout has been, how has this benefited Israel, and how we're being duped as a bunch of people that still probably believe. And I hand out the RBN cards to every Oklahoman, to every function I go to, and I hand them out and said, because you can handle the truth, tune into this station. Because I think Oklahomans are still buying in to CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, and Fox, and all these other stations. And I'm sure this is a real eye-opener to anybody that will actually listen to it. But it's going to be up to us to rally. And if we can ever get together, as long as we're divided, we're totally useless. And if we could ever get it together and be a group and be united, we might be able to turn this government around. So, there seems to be a big fallout, but you might put that in the, because I think George Bush and all these people had this figured out. They have those big think tanks that they go and they sit around and they think about what they're going to do for the next 10 or 20 years, and then they start putting it into effect. And all this was planned, and looking back at it, I mean, the writing was on the wall, but as a united country, we all haven't seen the big picture yet, and I'm still trying to get the word out, and I thank you guys for doing the best you can. And that's basically, if you could discuss on really where is this taking us, because we've lost a lot of young people on these wars that really haven't, if you look back at it, Saddam Hussein didn't have anything. Gaddafi has been, they've wiped out Libya. Syria has been demolished. All these people that love their land, love their home, have been displaced, and they're angry. And it's a gigantic nightmare. So that was my comment. You might take that into effect and think about that. Thank you much.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call, Andrea. And again, the Project for the New American Century back in the 1990s was, they were talking about 100 years of endless war, basically pushing U.S. dominance across the rest of the world to have the one world government, the New World Order, headquartered on the United States of America. Of course, I understand Israel wants Jerusalem to be the capital of the New World Order, so best 3 falls out of 5 on that one. But yeah, people keep saying, is there a world war coming? I think we're already there when you look at how many of these conflicts are ongoing, how many have already been, how long we've been at war. We've been at war in Afghanistan longer than World War I and World War II put together.
That's right. This is the long war, and that's what the neocons told us they were bringing us with their new American century, or the new 100 Years War. And they kind of announced that right after 9/11. They said, this won't be like previous wars where you get it done in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But World War II was over in less than 5 years after we entered it. But here we are still in Afghanistan, and there's no end in sight. I think part of the reason for this is that this is a kind of a disguised war. It's got all of these unfocused aspects. Geostrategically, the big threat to U.S. military dominance of the world is the rise of China, and yet China has been way down the list of people targeted, at least in the on the front burner. And one asks oneself, well, why would that be? And I think that it's a combination of the fact that we did allow our military to be hijacked by Israel, and so we have been primarily fighting Israel's wars in that region. And then all of the emphasis on Russia today rather than China is interesting. And I think that perhaps that is because really what we're looking at is an attempt to break up the heartland of Eurasia, to keep it divided all of these things are divide and conquer operations. The caller had asked about how Israel prospered from 9/11, and the answer is that this helped them carry out their Oded Yinon plan to bust up their neighbors and balkanize them along ethnic and sectarian lines. And Iraq is now functionally split into three pieces. Syria is busted up, Libya is busted up, Somalia got busted up, Lebanon was that massively hurt, and then they're trying to get Iran. And so Iran is in their gun sights now. That's all divide and conquer stuff. And likewise, in the larger picture, when they're trying to do this New World Order empire with the New World, the United States or America being the capital of this new global empire, they have to keep Eurasia divided. Brzezinski talked about this in the Grand Chessboard. If Germany, with its industrial power, ever hooks up with Russia with its resources and China with its labor force and skill, that's all she wrote for this project of trying to rule the world from North America. So I think that's what's going on. Is there, at one level, of course, Israel has hijacked us and set us to war against their enemies in a way that bleeds us dry and doesn't help the U.S. empire's strategic objectives at all. But at another level, all of this is part of a big divide and conquer operation. And the Russophobia right now is partly about sort of picking off Russia and trying to divide it from China and keep it busy. But it's not working because the hostility to Russia and Iran just drives Russia and Iran right into China's arms, and they end up forming an alliance along with the BRICS nations, which is going to bring the dollar down even faster. So I think that the strategy here is pretty unwise. It's being pursued very clumsily, and I don't think it's going to succeed. And I think we're going to see a crash of this one world empire project pretty soon, probably accompanied by a crash of the dollar.
I would absolutely agree with you on both of those. It's kind of interesting for all these think tanks that everybody is supposed to have. It seems like they come out with ideas that sound good at the outset, but they're never really thought all the way through properly. And it's hard to imagine that the open borders people, which is part of the New World Order agenda, that they didn't understand that the open borders was going to create social hostility, cultural clashes in all these countries, or maybe they just really didn't care. But again, we're seeing the face of an effort to literally carve out the New World Order, as George Bush told us years ago they were going to try and do it. But it does feel like it's stumbled badly. And it could be a lot like Alexander the Great's empire, where he succeeded in conquering all of the known world at his time, and then as soon as he died, it just all fell apart into ruination. Or Rome, where they built this amazing empire, and then it all collapsed and started the Dark Ages. And I think that's kind of what I see is going to be the ultimate outcome of this. We're going to see the U.S. government, the U.S. dollar, have a Soviet Union-style collapse, and it could balkanize the United States. But again, all that's going to be left in the wake of it is all the destruction that's been caused and none of the promised benefits.
That's right. And that's because our rulers are short-sighted, and they're really not that interested in pursuing a rational policy that would benefit a broad section of the population. They're fanatically pursuing their own interests and pursuing power over others, and doing so often with a kind of a short-term strategy in mind. I think we Americans are the worst at that. We have a pretty short history compared to a lot of other countries, and so our leaders are looking ahead to the next couple of years, but they're not looking, decades down the pike. And China, with its history of millennia of civilization, is thinking in the long term, as are some of the other countries. Iran and even Russia has a deeper historical consciousness than we do. Western Europe seems to have lost theirs. They've really been, I don't know quite how to describe it, but the traditional culture of Western Europe has really been dumbed down and neutered and taken away. I think the world wars had a lot to do with that. And there are those who think that that's all a conscious plan, that these one world people have engineered the world wars and other degradations of our traditional cultures precisely so that they can try to bring us together in some new dispensation where we don't no longer have these national units, and we no longer have strong families and a strong religious tradition and so on. And so we're kind of at their mercy. And I think there may be something to that in the long term, these guys may think that if they can really degrade us and take away our history and our sense of belonging and our traditions, they can much more easily kind of weld us together into this new world order that they're trying to build. But I don't think it's working. I think that we're seeing it starting to totter right now, and that when the fall comes, I just hope it isn't too horrific in terms of the loss of life that could ensue.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to go back to the phones, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all the callers, and I apologize up front right now. Mike in North Dakota, aloha. Welcome to the show. Do you have a question for Dr. Barrett?
Yeah, Kevin, how are you doing?
Hey, pretty good. Thanks, Mike. How are you doing?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Kevin, I seem to have a different take on 9/11. I see that the 1993 Trade Center bombing emptied out the buildings, which there was nobody in them at the time. And it was really used as an organized crime sting operation that would shut down all the airports in the United States, where they rounded everybody up, most likely Russian mafia types. And after 9/11, they had the Patriot Act, and now the Russian Israeli-speaking or the Russian Israelis cannot get out of jail like they used to. So the Patriot Act came in after 9/11, and we all talk about how happy the Israelis were over this, but I don't know if that's really the case. The Dancing Israelis was at the modern day Zapruder film. They just they wanted to make sure that it went right. Those buildings had to have had a project engineer to put in the explosives, and it would have taken a number of years. So we know they couldn't have flown planes into the towers, and it could have disrupted the whole sequence of explosions. I'm totally convinced, and most people think I'm crazy, but I don't think there was anybody in those towers. And it was totally a different scenario where everybody thinks Israel did it. The Jews in New York, which control the media, were totally involved. But I'm totally convinced it was the CIA, the NSA, and the New York media. And it was basically to shut down the best they could the Russian mafia, in which I don't think they're having too much success.
Okay, well, first of all, let me cut in here for just a second. There is no rule that says that Israel couldn't have been working with the CIA to bring about this false flag. And I don't think bringing down the towers had anything to do with the Russian mafia. In fact, even if you go back to the Project for the New American Century, one of their policy papers was called Rebuilding America's Defenses, and it said right in there that they needed a catalyzing event to accelerate their plans. Otherwise, it was going to take decades for the remilitarization of the United States of America. So as far as wiring the buildings for explosives, it wouldn't take years. It probably would have taken a couple of weeks, but there were reports from people who were working in the building that there was a lot of noise and dust coming down from floors that were empty. You need to remember the building was in financial trouble. There were a lot of completely empty floors that were not being rented. Nothing was going on. There was a renovation crew in there, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, who had their own private locked elevator. So it would have been very, very easy to do that, both for the towers and for World Trade Center 7. Again, traces of thermite were found in the ruins of the World Trade Towers. And very clearly in the photos, you can see there are demolition cuts that were put into those load-bearing members, probably by thermite cutter charges. Probably, given that it wasn't really a clean all the way down to the bottom demolition, I would say probably just a couple of... okay, let me... we're going to skip this last break here and try and get these last few phone calls in. Anyway, listen, thank you very much for the call here, and we're going to switch over to, let's see, Daniel in British Columbia. Aloha, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Dr. Barrett. I've been following you for years. I think you're great. I was going to mention about the art students that were living in the World Trade Center prior to 9/11. And if you could let the listeners know anything that you might know about gelatin, and if you think they had anything to do with planting those explosives. And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Well, that's a great question. I actually broke that story with Jonathan Elenoff of Core of Corruption. He's out of Colorado, really good researcher. And he did the research and came on my radio show, talked about this, how there was this so-called art project. It's funny how Israeli art students are everywhere. Well, these guys technically were from Central Europe, but there was an Israeli connection, and they were in the towers with a special pass that got them through all security, get out of jail free, go through any security you want, and they were up there with construction equipment, ostensibly so they could take out walls and windows and build a balcony or platform hanging out from the high-level tower. So that was supposedly some kind of art project. But so they're in there with all the blueprints to the building, complete blueprints, a total security pass to get past all forms of security. And that does look a little suspicious. That was one of the many incidents that lead us to say that, yeah, you're probably right, Mike, that there was a lot of busy activity going on in those towers during the run-up to 9/11, including a shutdown, a power down the weekend before, all of which would have contributed to them finishing up their final preparations for demolition. But yeah, those gelatin art students are definite suspects.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got one more caller waiting here, and that's Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. Do you have a question for Dr. Barrett?
Yeah, just like to get his comment. These last couple of calls have been pretty good. But Mike, I know you're hypersensitive about people calling in with their theories about 9/11 and what happened, because you don't want your station to be associated with any kooks or anything like that. I understand that. But don't you think that we need to get to the bottom of really what happened in order to be able to pin blame on who was responsible? I mean, with all the details in place. I know, and there's a lot of people that have done a lot of research, like architects and engineers and the pilots for 9/11 Truth.
Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth has done a lot of really wonderful work. Here's the point. The perpetrators of 9/11 would love for us to spend the rest of our lives arguing over little, tiny, fine details and just keep going in circles over and over and over again. We don't need to do that. There are things that we can all agree on. We know the official story is junk. We know the towers were brought down through demolition charges. The exact details don't matter. We all know that we have been lied to. And now is the time for the American people to stand up and say, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about a government that lies to us, that plays such horrible tricks on the American people to get us riled up and sent off to war? Because I think the American people, when they're forced to confront that, they don't want to be lied into war, especially if it's going to cost them the lives of their children or all of their money. And again, the government really doesn't legally have a right to lie to us. It's not in the Constitution. They do lie to us all the time, but every time they do, they delegitimize themselves. And I think the American people need to develop a zero-tolerance policy for being lied to, whether it's by the government or by the corporate media. And as that other caller was saying earlier, the polls are showing that the American people are waking up, that trust and confidence in Congress is at an all-time low. CNN's viewership numbers are a joke now. And again, that's why the powers that be are getting very nervous, and the independent media is now under attack.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Thank you very much. It's good points, and I'm going to sign off. Bye.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of the show here. Dr. Barrett, do you have a website?
Yes, my website is truthjihad.com. It's all run together. Truthjihad.com. You can get to all my work through that, pretty much.
All right. Well, I'm certainly going to post a link to that from whatreallyhappened.com, and we've got about 3 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I think you were right in saying that what's really the important lesson here from 9/11 is getting some justice and readjusting our policy. It's not so much how many controlled demolition modalities can dance on the head of a pin. It's like with the JFK assassination. Some people are really interested in all of the intricacies of the physics of the magic bullet theory, and some people with 9/11 are interested in the physics of demolitions and what happened to the Pentagon and things like that, and enjoy putting forward all of these different scenarios, some of them very bizarre, which doesn't necessarily mean they're not true. But that kind of talk actually alienates most people. So It is better, especially when we're talking to ordinary people, to stick with the kind of who did it and why. Yes, we know it was a demolition. It doesn't matter that much how they did the demolition. And I think that kind of discussion is a lot more useful. So I salute you, Mike, for doing that. I think you've done a pretty good job over the years of sticking to the important aspects of who did it and why. And you were also right that the CIA and Mossad have worked together, and they probably did on 9/11. Susan Lindauer has talked about her case officer, or CIA case officer, Richard Fuse, being on the phone with her, watching the towers blowing up and starting screaming, "The goddamn Israelis." And Fuse, she says, knew about the big attack on Lower Manhattan coming throughout the summer of 2001. And when it happened, he just didn't know how big and murderous it was going to be. And he blamed the Israelis for it, which would indicate that CIA and the Israelis were both in on it. Perhaps the Israelis were the ones who decided to blow up the buildings with thousands of people inside.
Well, I think probably it was a joint decision. I think the U.S. government was involved. We know that Dick Cheney was certainly in the Pentagon Situation Room just tracking the planes coming on in here. Remember that BBC News report about the collapse of World Trade Center 7, and it was still standing in the background? I mean, that tells you right there they were working on a script, and somebody got off the script and they delayed the demolition of World Trade Center Building 7. There's a lot of information about this. We're going to be coming out with it bit by bit. I'm already seeing members posting it over here to whatreallyhappened.com. So, Dr. Barrett, it was a pleasure having you on the show. We're going to have you back again. And as that other caller said, obviously very erudite, very, very well thought out. You gave me a couple of ideas I hadn't really thought about before.
Well, thanks, Mike. And I appreciate your terrific work, too. Keep it up.
All right, I certainly will. Thanks an awful lot. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of the show here, and I'm going to ask everybody to stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure that he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with everyone that you know. Please especially tell everyone that you know that all of the big social media giants, Twitter, Facebook, Google, are deliberately filtering what they show to you, to skew things toward the liberal agenda, and that cannot be tolerated. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure resulting in the loss of your home.